What if I told you the most powerful signals of attraction are completely invisible? What if right now someone in your life is secretly drawn to you, thinking about you, watching you, remembering small details about you, and yet you have no idea? It's not your fault. The truth is, many of us walk through life blind to the subtle language that speaks louder than words. A glance that lingers half a second too long. A smile that flickers when your name is mentioned. A conversation that starts with nothing, but somehow feels unforgettable. These are not coincidences, they are clues. And the people who learn to read them can change not just their relationships, but the way they experience the world entirely. You see, most women don't confess their interest outright. Not because they're insincere, but because they're cautious. They've learned from life that being too direct can lead to misunderstanding, to rejection, to judgment. So they use a different language, a secret one, and unless you're paying attention, you'll miss it. Imagine this. You walk into a bookstore on a rainy Tuesday. As you browse the philosophy section, you sense someone's eyes on you. When you glance up, she quickly turns away. Your paths cross again near the register. She smiles politely, but it's not just politeness. It's warmth, familiarity, something unspoken. You leave the store thinking about her, but you shake it off. Just in my head, you say. But what if it wasn't? This is the invisible realm of human connection. The micro moments, the subtle behaviors, the unsaid words that scream when you finally learn to listen. And the scary part, most of us never do. That's why this matters. Because if you miss the signs, you miss the chance. Today, we're going to peel back the curtain. We're diving into the subtle art of female attraction, the invisible signals women send when they're secretly drawn to you. Backed by psychology, driven by real-life observation, and filtered through the calm, disciplined lens of Stoicism. Because Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about sharpening perception. It teaches us to observe the world as it is, to see clearly, to remain grounded, even when everything around us whispers uncertainty. And it is in that grounded stillness that we begin to see what others overlook. Because the truth is, most people are too distracted to notice the clues, too caught up in their own stories to catch the half smile from across the room, the way her voice softens when she says your name, the way she remembers your favorite band after one conversation, but not you, not anymore. Because once you understand this hidden language, everything changes. The woman who used to seem distant suddenly becomes transparent. The conversations you used to think were meaningless begin to pulse with depth. You see her not the version she presents to everyone, but the version only revealed in fragments, in stolen seconds, in choices so quiet, they're almost silent. So, if you've ever walked away from an interaction wondering, was that something? This video is for you. Because yes, it probably was. And by the end of this series, you'll know for sure. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. It's the best way to support the channel, and it helps us create more videos like this deep, honest, and grounded in both psychology and philosophy. Your support gives us the fuel to keep going. Now before we continue, let me ask you something. Which of these is a stronger nonverbal sign of hidden attraction? A. A woman maintaining brief but frequent eye contact. B. A woman starting a personal story but stopping halfway and changing the subject drop. Your answer in the comments, A or B, and let's see who's really paying attention. Ready to dive deeper? Let's keep going. Alina didn't say a word when their eyes met. She didn't need to. Matteo felt something shift in the space between them, subtle, almost imperceptible, like the way light bends across a quiet painting. It happened inside the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, in front of a Caravaggio no less. People walked past them, murmuring about brushstrokes and shadows. But all Matteo could think about was that moment, that look, the lingering gaze. It was not flirtatious in the way movies tell us it should be. There was no exaggerated eyebrow, raised no biting of the lip. No, this was different. It was still vulnerable, full of a kind of curiosity that doesn't demand answers. It simply waits, invites, suggests, and it lingered half a second longer than expected. Just long enough for Matteo's chest to tighten. Just long enough to make him wonder if he imagined it. But he hadn't. The human eye has always held power. Science confirms that prolonged eye contact can increase intimacy, release oxytocin, and trigger a sense of closeness even between strangers. Yet, outside the lab, eye contact is more than just a neurological trigger. It's emotional territory. It's ancient. It's one of the first ways we ever learned to connect. Long before we had the words to say, "I see you, and I care." When a woman like Alina holds your gaze a second too long, it's never accidental. It's deliberate in its hesitance. It's her testing the waters, not in a game-playing way, but in a deeply human way. A woman drawn to you may not express it in language, especially not at first. But her eyes often betray her before anything else does. The look lingers because it doesn't want to leave. Most people miss these moments. They dismiss them as coincidence, or they're too busy checking their phones to notice. But you're different now. You're learning to observe, to slow down, to trust that your intuition isn't just fantasy. It's often your subconscious noticing what your conscious mind hasn't yet caught up to. That day in the gallery, Matteo didn't chase the moment. He didn't force a conversation or turn it into a performance. He simply met her gaze, soft and calm. And then he looked back at the painting. She did the same. No pressure, no tension, just quiet acknowledgement. Later, Elena would tell him, "I don't even remember what Caravaggio we were looking at. I only remember how you looked at me like you saw me." That's the other side of this unspoken language, how you respond. When a woman gives you that look, she's not just showing interest, she's searching for resonance. She's watching to see how you carry your awareness. If you rush to flirt or break the silence with cleverness, the moment may slip away. But if you remain grounded, if you meet her gaze with calm steadiness, you tell her something far more compelling. "I see you too, and I'm not afraid of this moment." Stoicism teaches us that perception is everything, not in the sense of how others see us, but in how clearly we see reality. When you live with this kind of attentiveness, you begin to notice the depth in people's eyes. You realize that not all looks are created equal. Some glance past you, some scan you, but a few, very few linger with weight. And when they do, they ask a question. "Are you awake enough to see me?" The look that lingers isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's admiration. Sometimes it's connection. But when attraction is present, it leaves behind a signature one you feel just as much as see. You feel it in the sudden stillness between two people, in the quiet smile that almost follows, in the way the air changes, not colder, not warmer, just charged, like something real might happen, even if nothing is said. And maybe nothing needs to be said, at least not yet, because sometimes the beginning of everything starts with a silence that holds more meaning than 100 words. So the next time you feel her gaze stay on you longer than it should, don't dismiss it. Don't rush to fill the space. Let it exist. Let it echo. Let it linger. Because in that pause, something timeless is happening. And if you're present enough to recognize it, you'll know. This isn't a coincidence. This is the beginning. Maya wasn't trying to be obvious. That's what made it powerful. The way her fingers brushed Noah's sleeve as she laughed. The way she reached out to pluck a stray leaf from his shoulder in Central Park that Sunday. It was light, fleeting, like a whisper that didn't want to be heard, only felt. Noah could have ignored it. Many would have. The mind is trained to dismiss the delicate, to overlook the soft touches that don't demand attention. But his stillness, sharpened by a growing awareness, allowed him to feel something stir beneath the surface. That brief moment of contact told a story all its own, Touch is often the most misunderstood language of attraction. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, often camouflaged as coincidence. But underneath the casual gesture is a decision. And when a woman chooses to close the physical space between you, not with grand gestures, but with subtle, intentional contact, she is saying something important. She is saying, I feel safe here. She is saying, I want to be closer. She is saying, this feels right. Touch has always been primal. It's one of the earliest forms of communication we learn before we speak, before we reason, before we even understand emotion. We understand touch, a hand holding yours during fear, a comforting pat on the back, a soft nudge in shared laughter. Our bodies remember what our words forget. In the psychology of connection, touch is known to trigger oxytocin, the hormone that fosters bonding, trust, and emotional closeness. When Maya's fingers traced the line of Noah's sleeve, it wasn't about flirtation, it was about presence. A moment shared in physical space, however brief, is often more revealing than hours of conversation. Noah didn't respond with a joke. He didn't turn the moment into a flirtatious exchange. He looked at her gently, letting the silence hold. Maya didn't pull away. That silence between them grew warm, no longer just absence of noise, but a container for something emerging. These are the signals most men miss, not because they're not smart or kind, but because they're too focused on what to say next, too busy scanning for what's obvious. But the deepest connections are often built, not through what's loud, but through what's quiet and sincere. Maya had liked Noah since the first time she heard him recite a poem at the open mic 2 months earlier. His voice wasn't theatrical, it was thoughtful, honest. He didn't try to impress, he simply let himself be seen. That vulnerability stayed with her, so she chose to sit beside him at that picnic. She chose to brush that leaf away, and she chose, in her own quiet way, to reach out. Touch, when given freely and without expectation, is one of the purest forms of intimacy. It's how we say, I'm here with you, without interrupting the flow of what's being said or felt. It's also a mirror. It reflects what we might be afraid to express. Stoicism doesn't teach us to avoid these moments. It teaches us to meet them with awareness. The goal isn't to overanalyze, but to notice. To recognize the difference between mindless proximity and mindful connection. The difference is everything. When a woman touches you during conversation, not by accident, but by instinct, it often means her comfort level with you has crossed into something deeper. It might be new, uncertain, still growing, but it's real, and your role in that moment is not to overplay it, not to inflate it into something it's not. It's to be present, to feel what's offered without grasping for more, to let the moment breathe, because if she feels she can be close to you without judgment or pressure, she'll want to return. She'll want to lean in, not just physically, but emotionally. That leaf Maya brushed away wasn't just a leaf. It was an excuse to touch what she already felt drawn toward, and the way Noah allowed it with stillness, with grace, told her something even more powerful. He didn't need to chase the moment. He was already in it. And in that, something simple but extraordinary was exchanged without a single word. Sophia didn't mean to say so much that night. The rooftop in Austin was alive with music and clinking glasses, but she found herself pulled into a quieter corner, beside a man she barely knew, Liam, who had just made a simple comment about the stars. It wasn't meant to be profound, and yet, something about the way he said it made her stay. What began as small talk soon shifted. She told him about the old treehouse she and her brother built when they were kids, how it became their world, their fortress, how it was the last place she saw him before he left for college, and how that silence afterward became something she carried. Her voice didn't tremble, but there was something behind it, a story rarely told. Liam didn't interrupt. He didn't reach for the easy comfort of "I'm sorry," or ask why she brought it up. He just listened, and Sophia noticed. That's the quiet miracle of a meaningful conversation. When a woman feels drawn to you, she won't always express it with compliments or attention. Often, it's the stories she chooses to share that reveal the most. Not rehearsed lines or polished anecdotes, but fragments of her truth. Moments she usually keeps hidden. When attraction is real, it doesn't always sound romantic. Sometimes, it sounds like vulnerability. Sophia wasn't trying to impress Liam that night. She wasn't trying to seduce him with words. She was testing something far more sacred: safety. She needed to know, could he handle what was beneath the surface? Would he still be there if she stopped performing? Women don't open up this way to just anyone. Emotional intimacy is a high-stakes offering, and when it's real, it's often disguised as a simple question. What do you think about this? Did you ever feel that too? And if you answer honestly, if you meet her story, not with advice, but with presence, she will lean in closer. This kind of sharing goes beyond attraction. It enters the territory of connection. You are no longer just someone she notices. You're someone she begins to trust. And that trust is the bridge between interest and intimacy. Too often, men miss this. They're waiting for signs in body language or flirtatious cues, and they miss the moment when she quietly tells them who she really is. Not in declarations, but in passing stories, thoughtful questions, and small revelations that invite you into her world. Psychology backs this up. Studies show that self-disclosure, sharing personal thoughts, memories, and vulnerabilities deepens emotional bonds faster than nearly any other behavior. When someone opens up, they are biologically more likely to feel connected to the person they're speaking with. But this only happens when that sharing is met with genuine attention. That's where Stoicism plays its part, not in becoming cold or distant, but in becoming fully present. In grounding yourself so deeply in the now that you stop trying to impress and start truly receiving. When Liam listened to Sophia on that rooftop, he didn't know he was passing a kind of test. Not a game, not a trick, a test of character. Could he sit with her sadness without needing to fix it? Could he witness her without turning away? The answer was yes, and Sophia felt that, in the way he didn't rush her, in the silence he allowed between words, in the quiet affirmation that said, "You're allowed to be this version of you with me." Sometimes, that's all it takes, because when a woman begins to talk about what matters about her childhood, her fears, her hopes, she's not just filling the air, she's reaching out, and your ability to receive her with patience and warmth will speak louder than anything you say. So the next time you're deep in conversation and she tells you something that feels personal, pause before responding. Not to analyze it, but to honor it. Recognize what's happening. She's not just talking, she's trusting, and in that moment, how you respond will define whether the connection deepens or disappears. Julian didn't notice the cup at first. He was running late to the workshop, flustered from the morning traffic in downtown Seattle, barely aware of the steady rain tapping against the windows as he walked in. But there it was, waiting for him on the table he always chose. A familiar paper coffee cup, warm to the touch, with his name spelled correctly for once, and a hand-drawn smiley face underneath a quote they had both laughed about the day before. He smiled before even seeing who had left it, but he knew Ava hadn't made a scene. She didn't wave across the room or point it out. She simply nodded when their eyes met, as if saying, "I remembered." And that quiet gesture said more than any grand confession could. This is the unspoken art of affection, a kind of devotion that doesn't seek attention. It simply acts. It observes, remembers, and responds in the smallest ways, leaving footprints that others overlook. When a woman is secretly drawn to you, she often doesn't lead with desire. She leads with care. You won't always hear her feelings in what she says, but you'll feel them in what she does. In the way she brings you something before you ask. In the way she notices when your mood shifts and adjusts her tone without pointing it out. In the way she gives not to impress but to quietly connect. Ava hadn't intended to do anything dramatic, but she'd been paying attention to Julian from the moment he introduced himself during the first day of the weekend creative writing seminar. There was something about his quiet nature, the way he listened more than he spoke. It wasn't just politeness, it was presence, and that presence made her want to return the favor, to show she saw him too. So she remembered his coffee order. She remembered the quote. She remembered the little things most people forget. Kindness, when it comes from a place of interest, often wears the mask of casual familiarity, but its weight is anything but casual. It says, I'm thinking about you when you're not here. It says, I want to bring something good into your world. And for the person receiving it, that kind of attention can feel like sunlight breaking through routine. Psychologically, this form of caring behavior builds what researchers call emotional investment. It creates trust because it feels safe. It feels personal. It communicates, without needing to explain itself, that you matter to someone in a way that's specific, not general, not performative, but intentional. But it takes awareness to see it for what it is. In a world that teaches us to chase dramatic displays and loud affirmations, these quiet gestures can feel underwhelming if we're not paying attention. That's where Stoicism becomes powerful. Not in making us cold, but in making us calm enough to see clearly. To notice the tiny details that reveal something much bigger. Julian didn't take Ava's gesture for granted. He didn't laugh it off or turn it into a flirtatious exchange. He simply sat with it, let it land. When the session ended, he walked over not with charm, but with sincerity and thanked her. It meant more than you probably think, he said, and Ava smiled, the way someone does when they've been understood. This is how subtle devotion works. It doesn't crash into your life. It arrives like a tide, slow, steady, persistent. You might miss it at first, but if you're still enough, you'll feel it pulling you in. A woman who's truly drawn to you doesn't need to announce her feelings. She lives them, through actions, through thoughtfulness, through remembering the way you like your coffee or how your voice shifted when you mentioned your father. She doesn't always ask you how you're doing. Sometimes she just brings what she knows will make you feel better. These gestures may seem small, but they're sacred. They are how connection is cultivated, not with noise, but with depth. The man who sees these acts for what they are is already different. He's not chasing validation. He's grounded, and in that groundedness, he becomes someone a woman wants to give to, not because she has to, but because something inside her is moved to do so. That cup of coffee, it wasn't just caffeine, it was a message, and sometimes, the quietest ones say the most. Julian didn't look at Ava as someone trying to figure her out. He wasn't scanning for signs, tallying touches, or decoding compliments. He was simply there with her, in the moment. That presence, more than anything he said or did, made her feel seen. Not analyzed, not judged, seen. Because in the end, that's what we all want, isn't it? Not to be solved, but to be understood, to be held not physically, but emotionally in someone's quiet attention. That's the gift of presence. And when it comes to attraction, it's the difference between fleeting and unforgettable. Through the eyes of Stoicism, presence is more than a mindset, it's a discipline. The world constantly pulls us into distraction, checking phones, planning what to say next, wondering if someone likes us or doesn't. But when you learn to stay with what isn't, instead of what might be, you begin to see people as they are. You don't miss the look that lingers, the touch that whispers, the story that spills out like an accident, or the kindness dressed as casual thoughtfulness. You notice, and when you notice, something beautiful happens. The people around you start to open not because you asked, but because they feel safe, like they don't have to perform, like they can exhale. Alina didn't need Matteo to flirt back. She needed someone who would hold her gaze without looking away. Maya didn't need Noah to make a joke. She needed someone who wouldn't flinch at closeness. Sophia didn't need Liam to solve her story. She needed someone to witness it. Ava didn't need Julian to return the gesture with grandeur. She needed someone who wouldn't overlook it. Presence is what made all of that possible. Most men miss these moments because they're focused on outcomes. They want to know if she's into them, if the signs are real, if they should make a move. But attraction doesn't bloom under pressure. It unfolds where curiosity lives, where patience breathes, where someone stops trying to read the script and starts being real. When a woman is drawn to you, it's rarely in the way movies portray. It's quieter, slower. It looks like care. It sounds like shared silence. It moves like trust. And she's watching how you carry yourself in those in-between moments when no one is looking, when no lines are being delivered. She's watching how you listen, how you respond to vulnerability, how you exist in stillness. A man grounded in presence is rare, not because it's hard to achieve, but because it's hard to remember in a world that rewards reaction over reflection. But Stoicism teaches us to return to ourselves, to stay rooted, to pause before chasing, to see before assuming, to wait before responding. In that pause is where all the magic happens. Being present doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean sitting back and hoping things work out. It means showing up with your full attention. It means choosing to stay instead of scanning the room for something more. It means allowing another person the space to be fully human, messy, layered, mysterious, and still choosing to meet them there. That's what Julian gave Ava. That's what Liam gave Sophia. That's what Matteo gave Alina. That's what Noah gave Maya. And in return, those women gave something back. Not because they were impressed, but because they were met. Attraction is never just about charm or timing. It's about resonance. And presence is how resonance is created. It says, I'm not trying to impress you. I'm here to understand you. And that understanding, once felt, is unforgettable. So if you're asking, how do I know if she's into me? Start with this better question. Am I present enough to see her clearly? Because once you are, you won't need to decode the signs. You'll feel them in the quiet, in the closeness, in the comfort she finds just by being around you. And in that space, where nothing is forced and everything is true, something rare begins to grow. Not attention, not performance, not connection. And that's always worth waiting for. Looking back on the stories of Elena, Maya, Sophia, Avand, the men who truly saw the it, becomes clear that the most powerful form of attraction isn't loud. It doesn't show up with fireworks or scripted lines. It doesn't chase or demand. It moves like breath, unnoticed unless you slow down to feel it. Each woman left behind quiet signals, and each man, guided not by ego, but by presence, caught them not with control, but with awareness. Elena's gaze in the Florence Gallery wasn't just a look, it was an invitation, a moment of silent recognition, between two souls in a room full of distraction. And Matteo saw her, not as a mystery to solve, but as a presence to meet. Maya's light touch in Central Park wasn't just a playful gesture, was a bridge, a gentle attempt to cross emotional distance. Noah, grounded and steady, didn't pull away. He leaned in with calmness, and that made her feel safe. Sophia, on that rooftop in Austin, didn't intend to share something so personal, but Liam didn't flinch when she did. He didn't feel the silence, he honored it. And in that space, she found a rare kind of emotional permission to be known without needing to explain. Ava's small act, a coffee cup left quietly with a memory scribbled on the side, was a seed. She didn't ask for thanks. But Julian understood, and because he noticed without needing more, trust began to grow. In each of these stories, what mattered most was not what was said, but what was felt. Not what was done loudly, but what was done with intention. It's a thread that runs through all real connection. The unspoken truth that who you are being in each moment matters more than what you're doing. So what's the deeper lesson here? It's this: attraction isn't something you manufacture. It's something you recognize and respond to. The signs are always there, if you're still enough to see them. But they're not waiting to be chased or conquered. They're waiting to be met with presence. Presence means you're not mentally 3 steps ahead, planning your next move. You're here. You're listening. You're watching. Not to manipulate, but to understand. That's what Stoicism teaches us. To live wide awake. To notice what others miss. To connect without control. To act without attachment. And above all, to remain grounded when emotion, uncertainty, or desire starts to stir. This is how you apply it to real life. The next time you're talking to someone, whether it's a new acquaintance or someone you've known for years, practice holding space. Don't rush. Don't perform. Let silence stretch if it needs to. Let her words land before you respond. Notice the softness in her tone, the details she chooses to share. The moments when her guard lowers, those are sacred. When you walk into a room, be the one who notices the energy before speaking. When someone looks at you, hold their gaze not to impress, but to be present. When someone reaches out, in a subtle way, a light touch, a thoughtful act, a vulnerable story, receive it with grace. Because when you live like this, something incredible happens. You become a person people feel safe around. A person people remember not because you tried to stand out, but because you made them feel seen. That's what Matteo did, what Noah did, what Liam did, what Julian did, and that's what you can do too. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be clever. You just need to be here. So now, I want to ask you, which story moved you the most, and why? Was it the moment of eye contact in Florence? The touch in Central Park? The story under the stars in Austin? Or the quiet act of care in Seattle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's learn from each other. Let's reflect out loud, because your insight could be the spark someone else needs today. And if this video resonated with you, if it gave you clarity or reminded you of something you'd forgotten, please hit the subscribe button. It helps us grow. It supports the channel. And most of all, it fuels us to keep creating thoughtful, meaningful content just like this. Until next time, be present, stay grounded, and remember, the most beautiful connections are often hidden in the quietest moments. You just have to be still enough to hear them.